Welcome GRD 121 Computer Graphics for Fall 2020, and we're going to start working on our wine bottle glass exercise. We've done this for a number of years, and it used to be a very simple exercise, but now we've been able to put more complex gradients in our bottles and glasses and actually make it a lot more realistic looking, and we've started putting labels on them that we've designed from our leaf logos. So that's what we're going to continue to do, so we're going to keep building on this. And if you go to coursework, look for wine bottle glass and click on the link. This is going to be a shared link. This will be a file that you're going to start with in Gravit. And if you're logged into your account, it'll open up in your account and you'll be able to save it into your account. And what I recommend doing when it opens up, it's actually called 11 wine bottle glass. What I recommend doing is coming over here and saving to cloud as, and just putting your last name on it, just so you know that that's the newest one you're working on. I'm going to put my name on here. And there is a save button. For some reason, I remember hitting return like there wasn't a save button, but there is a save button here now, apparently. I don't know if that just showed up or I was missing it the last time, but hit save and make sure that you wait till it syncs. It might take a little bit. This file won't be as big as the one that we worked on for the Halloween flyer, but it may take a little bit because this is a JPEG that's here. This is a sample of an older version that we did last year, and I think the one we do this year is even going to be better. We spend more time on the gradients, making this look a little more realistic, and then eventually we'll put our leaves on, our oak leaves and maple leaves, to make a label. But we'll do that later. We'll just focus on the bottle and the glass first. And you're going to start with a glass that you're going to trace. It's going to be a bitmap glass, and you're going to trace over it and draw a path and color it. We're not going to try to make it as realistic as this. We're just going to put some wine in it and experiment with gradients a little bit. And then the bottle, I have a couple bottle samples here, so you could do a white wine, I guess a red wine, and a darker wine here. I like to use this one. I like the color of this one to put a label on. And again, this is the sample, so we're going to do something like this. This is just a picture in the background that we put behind it, and it doesn't look really great, but we can do something like that. But we'll wait till the end before we do that, and we're going to work on an 8.5 by 11 again. Now, one thing I just want to show you, I'm going to open up another one that I was working on, and I just want to show you this. This is not the tracing one. This is the one I made, just so you're aware of that. This is the bottle we're going to trace, and this is the trace version. This is in Gravit. So this is, you know, a foil top. You can see there's a little foil lip. There's the foil on here. There's highlights that we put on here that are just basic shapes. There's neck highlights. If you ever see these things, these little videos here that are annoying, they're annoying me as I'm going down here, and I'll tell you this right now. Just go to Help, and if you turn off Display Enhanced Tooltips, that'll turn that stuff off because I find that annoying. So if you go to Help, Learn, and then uncheck Display Enhanced Tooltips, you don't have those things anymore because they're kind of a pain. If you don't need them, if they don't help you, there's no reason to have them popping up, annoying you. So anyway, what I was showing here is there's a neck highlight, there's a neck gradient, there's a right highlight. I still have things popping up here. There's the middle gradient that's on here, and then there's the bottle shape itself, which is the whole bottle. It kind of has a dark background, and this is the image that we're going to be tracing. And we'll start off with just rectangles and round corners. That'll be easier because in order to make it symmetrical, sometimes that's an issue, making it perfect on both sides. Instead of trying to trace around it with a pen, we'll do as much as we can with rectangles and then just kind of fill in areas with a pen and then just flip it and copy it so we can keep it perfectly symmetrical. We don't want a lopsided bottle. So again, that's the version I was just practicing with and working with the gradients a little bit. So I have a couple new things to share with you as far as working with gradients. Now, it's still not easy, but some of these things we use transparency where you could turn down the opacity. Some of these things have gradients where the last color on the gradient is made kind of semi-transparent, so it kind of blends into the bottle a little bit. So we're going to work on a couple of these things here. This is just a separate shape that's on the top here that we just kind of move over, and I'll show you how to copy a gradient from one shape to another. I didn't think you could do that, but you can. So a lot of cool things we're going to do on here once we get started. So we'll start with the bottle first because I think that's kind of cool. So I'm going to go back to my other one. So let me close this. And this is the one I was going to start working on, so I'll just save what I have so far. And again, this is just a reference, so you could kind of look at it and say, oh yeah, that looks nice, I hope I do something like that. I did put a bottle in here. Now, if you want to do a different bottle, you can. I just threw these in here because this is what I used last time because it's a very standard kind of wine bottle and has a nice gradient. If you want to do something different, you could certainly copy and paste some other bottle in if you want to work with. But this is a nice bottle shape, and it has some nice gradients and some nice foil, and I think looks pretty classy, I think, once we put a label on it. I have it locked right now. Now, you could move it depending which one you're going to use. So if you decide you want to use the one on the end, you want to use this one. That might be easier because there's not as much gradients going on. If you're nervous about gradients, there's not as much gradients on the body of this because it's all dark. There's just a gradient up here, which will be pretty easy to do. I'll show you how to do that. Doing that top won't be that hard. And, this one has a lot of gradients in it. I'm going to stick to this one. And that way, whichever one you do, you could kind of put in the middle and just kind of fill up the page. And then you could lock it. Now, before you lock it, one thing you might want to do, now I unlocked it so I can move it around. And remember, it's on the bottle page. There's 3 pages here. There's a glass page, there's a bottle page, and there's a sample page. And on the bottle page, there's the image bottle. Now, if you unlock it, you can move it around. You can also turn down the opacity. Now, you'll want to turn down the opacity to trace it, but then you'll want to put the opacity back up so you can see the colors and even sample the colors with the eyedropper. So I just want to point that out, that you may be adjusting this. You're not just going to lock it and be done with it. So for now, I'm going to lock it. Well, actually, remember, you can't turn down the opacity when it's locked. So I have it unlocked now, and I'm going to go to opacity, and I'll turn it down so I can see it better when I draw over that. And then I'm going to lock it. And I'm going to start tracing over top of this. So I'm on my bottle page here. I have it all saved. I'll save again. And I'm just going to start with the body of the bottle. I'll zoom in a little bit so it fills up my page a little bit. And I'm just worried about the body of the bottle right now. And I'm going to make a round-cornered rectangle. Now, I'm not sure about, I think the one I didn't round off the bottom that much. You can do that. But I'm going to start off with just the body in here. Now, I'm not going to be able to make it perfect, but I'll give it a shot. So I'm going to just take a rectangle. And again, you may not be sure where to start. I'm going to start on the body of the bottle and kind of go around here and go down as far as I can to the bottom. And just do that. I don't want to fill on it because I want to be able to see through it. So I'm going to get rid of the fill. Now, you don't have to put a stroke on it, but you might want to put a little one. And when you do, if you add border, if it's at 1 point, I double click in here and put 0.5. That's a good thin border to put on there, and it's black right now. Now, you might say, well, that's just a rectangle. What am I going to do with that? Well, when you go into here, when you choose sub-select, you get these little red buttons here. And I'm going to work from the bottom first because that's what I'm concerned about. I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to round that off. And if you grab these things, and again, I'm using my sub-select, and it's not a path. I didn't convert it to a path. It's a special feature of rectangles. And if I pull this in, I can kind of round that off a little bit. Now, it's not going to be perfect. You can see it's not as round as the bottom, but I don't even know if that matters that much. I'm not that concerned by getting the edge of the bottle that round. I'm not worried about that. I think it looks pretty good the way it is. But if you want to change it, we can. And I'm going to go up here. Now, I'm just going to leave this right now. So I'm just going to leave that the way it is. And the reason we're making these shapes, again, is so we can make them symmetrical and we could center shapes on top of each other. Now, I did it different ways the first time. I did like one coming down and then I drew a shape here. What I'm going to try to do is try to draw another shape. And I could actually copy this. I could duplicate this. Let me try to do that. I have one rectangle here. Now, I'll name these in a little bit. I don't have to name them right away. So I'm going to copy this. I'll do Command D. And now there's my copy on top. I'm going to move this up, like up here, I guess right about there. And what I'll try to do, and I'm not worried about the bottom yet, but what I'll try to do is see if I could round that in even more and get it to match pretty closely. Now that looks pretty good. Now I'm not worried about that part yet. I might have to just draw something in there, or we can even edit it later by just adding anchor points. So I'm kind of using shapes that are easy to create instead of making lines with the pen tool because they're hard to keep symmetrical on both sides. Now let me just check out the bottom. The bottom doesn't matter, it's more rounded in here, but what we're going to do here is we're going to join these together. We're going to unite them. Now we haven't done that in a while, but I could go right here with my pointer and I could just highlight right through these. Now this is why you want to make sure your bottle is locked, because if I drag right through those, I don't want to highlight my bottle image. So I have these two rectangles selected, and I'm going to do a unite, or union. I guess union is the noun, unite is the verb. So I'm going to do a union. And as long as I don't have to mess with any of the round corners anymore, which I don't think I do. Now it's still a compound path or a compound shape, so I can make it a path. So I'm going to convert to path. And now it's a path with anchor points. Now what I'm going to do next is just kind of work on the top here. So I'm going to follow the similar theme. I'm just going to kind of draw a rectangle coming down. Now it does taper out slightly, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. And what I'm going to do at the top is maybe just round the corners a little bit. And do you remember how to do that? We take the sub-select tool in Gravit and just pull in a little bit and just round that off a little bit. Now I'm not worried about this down here because that's going to unite with it. But if I want to zoom in a little bit, I can go up here and see what it looks like. And if I need a little more, and that's probably pretty good, I could drag up to extend it a little bit. Now again, it's not perfect, but it's rounded off, so that looks pretty good. I don't know if I really need the tiny arch up there, if that's a big deal. But it looks pretty good. And if I'm happy with that, if I'm happy with the round corners, I can convert it to a path. And what I might want to do when it's a path, and let me see what's going on here. Oh, it looks like it has, oh, that's interesting. It still has little like nodes on here. I haven't messed with that. Let me double check that is, because typically what happens is it makes anchor points going around here. Now I can't convert it to a path, so it stays like that. That's interesting. I didn't realize that it keeps those round paths on there. But I can do that right now. Let's see if we can add things to it. I'll go to my sub-select again. So now, oh, you could kind of move this out. It looks like, that's interesting. I wanted to just move these out a little, so I'm going to move it out slightly, and I'm going to move this out slightly. Now, I'm not sure if that's perfectly symmetrical, but it's probably not bad. And one thing I'm going to do too is I'll zoom out. It wasn't that necessary to make those come out a little bit, but as long as I saw they were going out a little. Now I'm going to highlight both of these and make sure that you have the pointer. I didn't have the pointer there. So I want the shapes. So that's why I'm going to highlight both of these shapes now with the pointer. And I just want to make sure they're centered. I just want to make sure they're aligned on center. And if they move slightly, then they're okay. Now, there's a couple things you could do here. We could unite these. I'll zoom into this little area up here so you know what I'm doing. So we have two shapes here. We could unite these, and then we can add an anchor point and add an anchor point, and just kind of like add an anchor point there and here, and just kind of make a little groove like that and just kind of fix it. Or we can draw a shape over top of it. So I think these are close enough that we could probably just add an anchor point, kind of tweak it a little, and add an anchor point. So I'm going to try that. So I'm going to unite these and see what happens, because I'm not sure how this round corner thing is going to unite. Let me look at the other one. I didn't even look at it. See, that has anchor points on it. I'm not sure what happened with this one. I'm not sure why that, unless it did that when I combined it with another one. But this one, it doesn't have like the standard anchor points when I click on it. Let's see. When I click on it, it isn't the standard anchor point. So anyway, again, I didn't encounter that last time, and we can't make it a path again, so I'm not sure what exactly that is. It is interesting, so it looks like we can still edit the anchor points on it. Now, what I'm going to do is join these together. Now, when I join these together, that stuff should all go away. So I'm going to just take my pointer again and highlight both of these, and I'm just going to use the union again and make them one. So I don't think those round corners up at the top, just to check this, because maybe they just stay like that until I join it with something else. See, there's two little, see, they're not anchor points. I don't know. That's interesting. I'll have to look into that more. I wasn't aware of that. The other one just turned into anchor points. So I'm not sure what I did in order for that not to turn into anchor point. Now, it's still a compound shape. So that compound shape means it's undoable. Now, sometimes that's helpful, especially if you mess something up, you can undo it. But I really want to make it one path. So I'm going to convert this whole thing to a path. And that should make, yeah, now these things are gone. Now they're regular anchor points here, and that's gone. So I guess the more you kind of convert it to another shape, the more you make it editable, those things go away. But that's what's interesting. I'll have to look into that more. Now, what we have to do here is probably just add a point here and add a point here. Now, I was saying that we should try to keep it as symmetrical as possible. You could draw a little shape around here and make it fill in, but let's try to do this. Let's try to add a point by just clicking here. And actually, there's a guide here. Now, I don't know when I put that there, but it might not be on your original, because I think I started working on this and I put a guide out, but I'm going to put a guide there because that will actually be helpful. And then I'm going to put a guide right about here because that's about where I'd want an anchor point to be. And let me just use my sub-select tool, and I'm going to click and add a point. And I'll click right here and add a point. And what I'll try to do, remember making the pair? We actually went here and deleted it. And what I'll try to do is see if I can just kind of bend this in a little bit, like that. And that looks pretty good. Now let's see if I can do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to add a point here. Now be careful not to be on the guide. You need to be on the path. and just click once and you'll see an anchor point. And then I'm going to do it right on here again, and I'll add a point. And then I'll select this one and I'll hit delete. And what I did, I don't know if the handle's in the same place. I'm just going to pull this handle in and just do that. And that looks pretty good. I could shorten it a little if it's too much. And that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that so far. So I'll go back to my pointer tool and I'll zoom out a little bit. And again, if you wanted to change the shape down here and make it a little longer, you could. I could go down here, I'll zoom in and scroll down to the bottom. And if you wanted to round this off or move anything, you could. I guess you would take the sub-select and just kind of maybe bend it a little. I'd select it, and it looks like there's a couple points here, so I would actually select that one and delete it. Select that one and delete it. Looks like there's two right on top of each other. I'll delete that one. Looks like there were a couple right on top of each other, and delete that. Now, if I wanted to bend this, I could just kind of bend this down a little bit. Just slightly. And that looks okay. I could move this up and mess around, but I really don't want to mess with it. Actually, it looked better when it was kind of tighter there. So I could actually highlight these two anchor points and just kind of bump them up slightly. I just drug through them and just used my arrow key to move them up. I could go down here and move that down a little bit, although it's going to start making a little dip down there. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to be happy with this bottom of the bottle, and I think I'm okay like that. So that's the body of the bottle. And what I'm going to do here is call it bottle body. And I'll go back to my pointer tool, and eventually what I think I'm going to do is fill it with a dark color, and then we're going to put something on top of it. So this will be like kind of the outside. This will be all the dark shadows in it. And then we're going to put lighter colors on top of it. I think that's what we're going to do next. But before I do anything else, what I'm going to try and do is do this kind of highlight color. Not these highlights, not these specular highlights where you have the shine of the bottle, or this one over here, which is a little duller. These are called specular highlights, like you would have on metal or glass, where light really shines off of them. So not those. I'm talking about the highlight in the middle where there's actually the color going through the bottle. I want to make this kind of round shape because I still want the dark on the end. So I'm going to zoom out slightly. I guess I'll just leave it 100% for now. But what I'll do is I'll start drawing a shape here that kind of goes in a little bit. And I'll go to about there, and I'm going to convert it to a path. I'm not going to make it a round corner rectangle or anything like that. I'm just going to convert it to a path. Now there it's called a path. And I'm just going to call it bottle inner, and I'm going to save it. And I'm going to zoom up to this part and use my sub-select tool and just kind of bend this up. Remember, if you just hover over this, I'm just going to bend this up kind of like that. Now it's not going to be perfect, but I'm just going to bend it up there, and now click over here where I have an anchor point. Just kind of round that off a little. Now this isn't going to be perfect because it's not perfectly symmetrical, but I'm going to try and do it by eye as best I can. Because we're actually going to have a highlight that'll go over on top of this anyway. So just something like that. So that's all I'm looking to do. I'm not worried about the corner here because we're going to have a highlight that goes over top of that. And that covers that up a little bit. So that's just the color. Now what I am going to do down here is I want this dark color to show through. Now again, it's faded out, but I'm going to just hover over here. Again, I'm still using my sub-select tool. And I'm going to move this up a little bit. Now, if that seems too sharp, you could put an anchor point. I could undo that, and you could put an anchor point here and an anchor point here, and then drag in the middle a little bit. And you could even really zoom in the bottom to round that off. But again, if you left it pointy, I don't know if anybody would notice. I'm going to hover over here and just pull that down. And hover over here and pull that down. Just the roundness will probably look better than sharp corners. This is going to be the light color in the middle. And eventually we're going to have to start looking at the bottle separate so that we can see the colors a little bit better because it's kind of faded out right now. And before I do that though, I'm going to make one more shape. I'm going to draw some other shapes on here while I'm over top of the bottle. And actually some of them we can trace over if we move the bottle to the side. And I think I'm going to do that. So let me save what I have. Actually, before I take a break, let me do a couple things here. A couple short things, and then we'll focus more on the gradients. But in terms of the body shape here, you can see the bottle kind of comes out with a little lip here. What I'm going to do is just kind of make another little shape on here. I'm going to zoom in to the bottle top here and just make a rectangle and really zoom in. And remember, we could always align it, so I'm not that worried about how centered it is, but that looks pretty good. Doesn't have to be that perfect, but just so it comes out a little bit. That's what I'm looking for, just something like that. And I'm going to round it off a little. Remember, just use your sub-select and just pull these in a little bit. And you can stretch it out still. You find it, you like the roundness, but it's now it made it a little too narrow. You could still stretch this out a little bit. And I'll just do something like that. Now it does kind of flip up, but we're only worried about the edge shape right now. We're not worried about any of the like shadow or anything. We're going to do that on top. So I'm just going to put this on here, and then what I'll do is I'll convert it to a path. And then I'll use my pointer and highlight both of these and do a unite. So I'm just uniting these top pieces here. So make sure they're perfect before you do that. And again, it's just for the outer ridge. So I'm going to do a union. Well, I guess when I clicked on that, it did a union. I didn't mean to, but I clicked there and it made a union. So that looks good. That's what I want. Now, you're not going to unite these. This is going to be a separate shape. So let's zoom out and see what's going on here. And this compound shape that I have now is still because I joined something else, it changed the name. So I'm just going to convert it to a path again and just call it bottle body, because it looks like it changed when I converted the other one, when I united the other top into it. So I'll call it bottle body. And I actually want it underneath bottle inner. So make sure you drag it down and you see that little plus sign, you see that little red dot, not this full kind of red color, or kind of magenta color, but underneath here. So now bottle body is below there. So I have everything in the right position. We're just going to do a highlight on here, but one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock this layer and I'm going to move it over. And this will help us see it in full color, and I'm going to put the full color on. So this is the bitmap image, and that way I can use my eyedropper and sample some colors and put it on here. And one last thing I'll do before I take a break here. I still have this shape here. I have this shape, and I'm going to just make a copy of it, and I'll just hold my Option key or your Alt key, and I'm just going to do a drag copy and make a copy of the bottle shape. And it's about the same height as this. What I'm going to do, I'll use one of these guides here. I'll zoom in so you can see a little bit of what I'm doing here. I'll use my space bar. I'll see if I could grab one of these guides. I'm going to grab on the guide and put it there. And I think I have the tops about the same, so that's okay. And what I'm going to do on this shape, this extra shape here, I'm going to just use it to get the intersection of these shapes here. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle like over top so that it encompasses that whole top. You see what's happening here? I just drew a rectangle over top of that, and I'm going to highlight both of these. Now this is not the original. This is my main bottle that I'm working on. This is like a copy I made off to the side. And now that I have these both selected, I'm going to use something in here called intersect. And look at that. And it says compound shape. So I'm going to convert it to a path, and I'm going to call that path foil top, because that's going to be used to put the foil top over top of the bottles. So I'll just keep that off to the side for now. So if I zoom out, I have my foil top, and that's going to be on top of everything, so I can move that to the top. And I have my bottle shape that currently has two shapes, or two paths. It has an outer path, which is bottle body, and then it has this inner path, which is bottle inner. And then we're just going to put a couple highlights on here. We might have to make a neck inner to just get that little gradient, because we're going to make the bottle body have a dark color, and then this shape will have this gradient in the middle. And then we're just going to draw two shapes here with our pen tool as best we can to be the highlights, and then we'll put a little highlight here. I don't know if we need one there or not. And then we're going to put a gradient on the foil. The foil will have that gradient. So that's what we're going to do next in part 2 of our wine bottle glass. So we're continuing our bottle. The glass won't take that long. The bottle will take a little bit longer, but we want it to look really good, so we'll take more time on this. So we'll see it in part 2 of the exercise 11 wine bottle glass